subcommittee meeting, this bill provides another route to apply and to expand the availability to practice law in the great state of Iowa. Current law requires graduation from the law school. This bill adds another alternative. 10 years of experience working at the General Assembly in research or analysis, or a member of the General Assembly. All applications must pass the bar exam to be able to do it, much as though you have to do it if you graduate college. Pass the law. So, if you are online and wish to speak, please raise your virtual hand. We will come to you at the very end of this particular meeting. I expect a professional, robust conversation on this item, and we are going to not start with LSA, but right next to LSA, work our way around the room, then we'll come back to online if there's any hands up.
Thank you, Senator. Lisa Davis with the Iowa Association for Justice. We are registered as opposed to this. I'm glad you cleared up one question we had, because from our reading of the bill, it seemed like the person would just automatically be admitted to the bar without having to take the bar exam, which that in of itself is a big concern, but we just have some concerns with, quite honestly, knowing the law well enough when you've been under this dome with 10 years experience. And we just think there's a lot more to the practice of law than reading bills, writing bills, that sort of thing. So that is why we're opposed. Thank you.
Cindy Gangson at the Denton Davis Brown Law Firm, and we represent the Iowa Academy of Trust and the State Council. At this time, we are currently undecided. Fact-finding mission for us. Just for awareness, the members of Iowa Tech are all licensed attorneys who have gone to law school and then taken the bar and have been licensed to practice. Available if there's any questions about our membership.
Caitlin Jarzen with the Iowa Judicial Branch. We are registered opposed to this bill. Admission of attorneys is a core function of the Judicial Branch. This bill would allow someone to qualify to be an attorney without having completed traditional legal education. Aside from residency, the only qualification required to serve as a judge in Iowa is to be a licensed attorney in good standing. So this bill would allow someone to qualify to serve as a judge without having completed traditional legal education. Formal legal education covers subjects such as courtroom procedure, rules of evidence, professional ethics, and effective client representation. The judicial system depends on attorneys and judges who are prepared to handle civil, criminal, juvenile, and appellate cases, not just questions of policy or statutory interpretation. The judicial branch's concern is not about legislative service, which is valuable and important, but about ensuring the qualifications for practicing law and ultimately serving as a judge remain grounded in consistent, comprehensive legal training. Thank you.
I got a quick question for you, Mike. Are there any states in the United States of America that you don't have to go to law school and you can sit for the bar exam without going to law school?
I believe there are two. The only one I know for sure is California.
Used to be New York. I don't know if it still is.
I can't speak to that.
California. So what's the process in California to take the bar exam without going to law school? You know?
I'm not familiar with that. But my understanding is there's some expedited process, but I don't know enough to speak to it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Nothing but that's unlimited.
Or Croto.
Or Croto.
Here for the entertainment. Is this on?
It is on.
Oh, it is on, okay. Good afternoon, my name is Jim Carney, and I represent the Iowa State Bar Association. And you might be surprised to know that we're against this bill. No, maybe you aren't surprised. We are. We believe that it's the court's prerogative to determine how you are admitted to the bar, and that it is basically a question of separation of power with the court, and stand by Caitlin's comments. There was a recent case that kind of brings this an idea anyway, in terms of legislative experience and all of that, which we really appreciate, and you know, it's just unbelievable what get working here at the Capitol for 10 years, but we don't think that equates into preparing yourself to take the bar exam and to practice law. And we say that in a very respectful manner. The recent case was the public defender case, 67 pages, where they were going to constrict lawyers into taking cases over in the Davenport area, and just tell them, hey, show up, and we're going to take these cases. And at the very last page, the court said, where does this end? Do we order doctors to take patients they don't want to serve, to treat? We do that with dentists, we do it with whatever. It kind of, there's, in our mind anyway, some similarities to this bill. So thank you for the opportunity to comment on it. We are against it.
I got a question for you, Jim.
Sure.
Yesterday, I believe the bar was registered as undecided on this. What's changed to move you from undecided to against?
The bar is a little bit like the Titanic in terms of getting it to take positions. We work through a legislative committee and then through an administrative committee, and then sometimes we even go to the Board of Governors. But our officers were out of town attending a national meeting down in Texas, I believe. So when they got back,
I was just surprised to see you as undecided yesterday, that's all.
well, we register as undecided initially so that if we are asked questions, we can talk to you and not violate any lobby rules. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks as though we don't have anybody online wishing to speak. Senator Weiner. Questions, closing remarks?
So, I take this seriously because the legal profession is a really important profession. Just like medical profession is an important profession and various other professions, whether it's college, post-grad, or an apprenticeship. They're all important professions. And we deserve as Iowans that everybody who undertakes the profession is really qualified to do so, and that people are, in this case, are gonna get quality representation. The one issue that's been raised is the notion of the judicial branch. The judiciary is a separate and equal branch of government and should have the ability to set the requirements. My experience in law, and I practiced for a while, not for a huge long time, is that attorneys themselves, as was indicated with this public defender case, attorneys themselves specialize. So someone who does criminal law probably wouldn't be comfortable doing family law. Someone who does corporate law wouldn't be comfortable doing trust and estates because they don't know the details of it. And they don't want to run afoul of professional ethics or end up with a complaint against them or being sued for ineffective representation. Another issue that I have with this is that why limit it to legislators or people who work in the legislature? There are, there could be equal protection arguments about that. Why don't you open it up to everybody if you're going to do that? But the main concern has to do with effective representation. And if we were to end up with people who may pass the bar exam, I can tell you that in California, it's the bar exam I took. It's a tremendously difficult exam to pass. They have a low pass rate, and the reason they have a really low pass rate is that there are a lot of people there who try and take it without having been to law school, who go to these sort of fly-by-night law schools, who are really, their sole purpose is like a glorified bar exam review class. But they fail spectacularly in spectacular numbers because law school and the bar exam are sort of are aligned to work together to make sure that people have the background, the education, to represent clients well. So the other thing that I'm concerned about is if you ended up with people sort of getting into the bar like this, that we might end up with more defendants claiming ineffective representation, having cases overturned, and actually increasing the workload for an already overworked judiciary. I mean, like, I look at my daughter who's about to journey out as a union carpenter, and she's worked really hard, and she's had to take tests, and she's nervous about the tests sort of at the end of it over the next couple of months to make sure that she can actually journey out. I mean, I've had years of experience doing home improvement, but like, nobody would hire me to hang drywall or put in new window frames or in their right mind, but I suppose I could put out a shingle as such. So I just don't, this is a profession that's really important to our ability to have a functioning justice system that all Iowans have access to. So this approach just doesn't seem appropriate to me.
Senator Dickey.
Thank you. I must say, when I first saw this bill, I kind of chuckled, like probably most did. And I started thinking about it a little bit. You know, we hear a great deal about the shortage of attorneys we have, especially in rural Iowa. Many counties don't have an attorney. I did a little looking into it, and I still have a hard time believing this number, but what I found was in 2024, 67% of divorce cases in Iowa had at least one party that did not have an attorney. So if that number is true, and maybe that's not the exact percentage, but it's got to be a fairly high percentage, to say Iowans are already deciding that if they're willing to represent themselves, they're making a decision that an attorney's not needed. I think that's twofold. One, they might think they can represent themselves, but I think a bigger part is the cost. I'm sure the availability of attorneys factors into it, especially for rural Iowa, but the cost, it's horrendous. The cost to do anything with an attorney. So I think Iowans have already made that decision that the majority are okay with legal representation without an attorney at some point. I look at our legal system. Our legal system was established in 1838, not 1846, but 1838 when Iowa was a territory. Back then, I don't even think divorces were really commonplace until the 70s. So to think of how our legal system's changed in those 100 years, and what cases, and when our legal system was set up to where it is now, it's changed dramatically. The number of cases that deal with divorce or family court are substantial. I would like to find out what the percentages are, but they gotta be very substantial in our court cases. So seeing that Iowans are in such a percentage of those cases are choosing to represent themselves, I think it's a topic that we should look at talking about more. I wouldn't say that if this were to go into law and this were to happen, and you, Senator Weiner, you may have a very good point. Why limit it to the people who work in this building? Obviously, many Iowans are representing themselves without experience inside this building, so maybe it should be expanded. But just the number of Iowans that are trying to find a way to represent themselves already is showing, I think, the validity of the conversation. I cannot imagine, well, I say I can't imagine, I would guess that if someone went through this process, I would guess they're probably not gonna be, representing somebody in a murder trial. We're probably not thinking the worst of it, or not, excuse me, not the worst, the hardest of the hard for attorneys to represent those type of cases. But I could see an avenue for someone to really specialize in some family law, or walk someone through a divorce case, or dealing with some petty theft type things. I think there's an avenue for that makes it much more affordable and available to all Iowans, but especially rural Iowans. So I'd be happy to sign off and continue the conversation.
All right, I got a quick question, real fast, for the bar. Let's say let's say we're talking about divorces, maybe and I have a friend who can't afford an attorney, but I got a little bit of legal knowledge, at least more than that person does, and you're trying to help them. Am I practicing law without a license by doing that?
I think just talking to a friend or
But helping them go to court, helping them file things and stuff like that, and being there with them at court. I would assume I can't stand up and talk, right? Because I'm just their friend, I'm just trying to help them. In a family law case, I'm not talking about a murder trial or anything like that, but a family law case or something about that. You know,
Are you giving legal advice?
that's the question.
Well,
I think,
no, I'm asking.
I think I am. I think in between the two of us, we're working on it, we're trying to figure out legal advice on how to do it. I would think you're practicing law without a license, right?
That's my take on it. I defer to learned,
I mean, I think in some of these situations, I get all of this, and I agree, I don't think somebody that necessarily works here, or works in this building for 10 years, should be going and doing, the practice of law in a courtroom to the extent of defending things and stuff like that. I think the other problem I have, though, is judiciary, and this is kind of a fiefdom, which I get some reason for the fiefdom, but we haven't talked anything that I've ever heard of in this capital unless it's something that I just haven't heard, which is kind of hard in this capital because everything gets heard. We haven't talked about how to get more attorneys besides pay more money. We haven't talked about ways to try to get more people working for indigent defense, except for raise the fee so people will do it. We haven't offered additional ways for us to get there. We haven't talked about going to the California method and trying to allow people to do that. If they take the bar exam 15 times and they go through that process, we haven't talked about internships. I think California requires an internship too. I don't think you can just, at least the way I read it, where some states require internships, where you don't have to go to law school, but you go through an internship. I don't necessarily think this bill, and I'm gonna sign off on it today, I don't think this bill is necessarily gonna be the answer or something that moves forward, but I hope it puts the people in the room in the conversation around ways to get more attorneys into these areas that can help in areas where people are trying to do it on their own currently, or we don't have indigent defense and stuff like that. We can use ways to modify our system but still have good quality attorneys through internships, through still having to take the bar exam, and maybe the school itself isn't necessarily the only way we have to do it. So I think, and I hope, that this starts conversations about alternatives that are good alternatives that work for us to move forward. So,
Any chance you'd allow me to say something?
yeah,
So that, I hear you, I actually have a bill that I would love for you to look at, that would that would allow for loan forgiveness for attorneys, not similarly to what we do for medical professionals and mental health folks, to try and get some more to stay in the state or more to practice in a rural area. That's one thing we could do that would be proactive. There aren't two different kinds of attorneys is the problem, and a lot of folks have always done pro se on their own, and that's what makes no fault divorce really easy. That would just make things like name changes really easy in small claims court. That's why those exist. This is really, I understand the conversation part, but it's really concerning to me that a bill like this would move out of subcommittee, because that tells me the subcommittee process is sort of broken. Let's have a conversation, but I don't think this bill is the vehicle. Thank you for allowing me to speak a second time.
I'll say I don't think the subcommittee system's broken. I think the idea is we want to take more input past this, and if this isn't the way, as I've said, and I got taught this by my city manager at the city of Belin, if you don't like something, come with some better solutions on how to do it. Don't just say no. So keeping this bill going, hopefully some people in this room will say, hey, you know what, that's not a great idea, but let's try this. Let's have more conversation. We kill the bill, and I know how this building works. Everybody goes home and says, that's dead. We're not gonna talk about ways to get more attorneys. So I don't believe it's broken. I actually think passing stuff like this in order to keep people talking is exactly why we do these, and exactly sometimes why we pass something off of a subcommittee meeting that we don't know is necessarily gonna go anywhere, but we sure the heck want some conversation going and some good ways to try to figure out how to make this work. Internships, stuff like that. I'm all ears. I think Senator Dickey's all ears. I think Senator Weiner's all yours if there's other alternatives, and I'm more than happy to look at her bill. But with that said, we will adjourn Senate File 217.
To your point, Senator,
Yes.
Last guy
the Supreme
thought.
Court actually already put together a task force
Huh?
to look at
Oh, I was
pretty
over
much
there.
gets opened up into every option, diploma,
There you
privilege,
go.
accreditation. So we're in the process of doing your suggestion right now, and I'm happy to report back on the status of it.
How long ago did they start that, and how long before they expect?